All right, tonight I got the fuel pump working. I had a little issue with the wiring. I got the throttle cable. I had an issue with that. It didn't have any power. Got all those fixed, troubleshooted all the issues one by one. And believe me, when you mess around with the wiring harness, you'll get more than one issue. Anyway, got all that done. And now I am ready to start it up. Let's see what happens. Here we go. All right, listen to it purr. Hear that fuel pump? Oh my gosh. That sounds so good. Here's my throttle. Listen here. Look at that Jeep rock. Alright, here's the exhaust. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Alright, we come around here. Look how quiet that is. That is awesome. Alright, there you go. It's running. Sounds good. In a previous video, I showed you the gas pedal, and I have now modified it and test fitted in the Jeep. So let me show you what I have. So there's this is the stock unit. It used to go up here, back down and around, and I cut off all the unnecessary thing for the pedal going in and out. And then I bolted this into the stock, the lower stock mounting hole. This will be a new hole. And then when I had it up there, I test fit the pedal where it needs to go. I clamped it in place, and now, so I've marked it here and marked the outline, and I did the same on this side, although on the dark it didn't show up real well. And now I'll get this welded, cut off the excess, and trim off all this, and weld both sides of this up. Then it'll be ready to bolt in. In a previous video, I told you that I was putting stainless steel fuel lines in, but in reality, that was a pain. So I have replaced all of these fuel lines with mild steel, because as I found out with stainless steel, you cannot, it's a bitch to work with. So I decided to replace all the way from the engine back to the tank with the steel. And then I used compression, that didn't work, so now I used flare, and hopefully that will work. So tomorrow I will put pressure to it and see if it leaks. Now that the fuel system is working and I've started it up, I need to tackle the gauges. So I got my odometer gauges, and here's what they look like. I showed those in a previous video. So now wiring them up. The wiring actually took a lot longer than I thought it would, but here's what I have. So these green wires, that is illumination, had to go to every single gauge on here. The red wire is 12 volt power. My black obviously is ground, so I had to wire all 6 gauges up. I ended up buying off of Amazon for like $3. I bought a computer pigtail, which basically had a male and a female plug with these yellow and black wires. I didn't really care about that because I have these color-coded wires on this end, and I have the color-coded wires the same on the other end, marked with where they go. I'll be hooking these up into the Jeep and installing these gauges tomorrow. All right, tonight was a night of tying up some loose ends. I got the fuel system redone. I had to redo the stainless steel, which I thought was a good idea, and it turns out it wasn't. Stainless steel lines, put in regular zinc lines that I could flare. So I got that all done, tightened up, and then tonight I worked on my dash, and here is what we have. So my dash is in. Turn on my lights. Look at that. Now hit the key. Everything kind of fires up. So that, I got that done tonight. A couple other miscellaneous things I've done tonight. My stick shift and my gas pedal. So let me show you what I did. So I took the stick shift and I cut it right here. The transmission is 2 inches forward, so I had to take this 2 inches, and I have a 1 inch body lift, so I took it 1 inch down. Now that is what my new stick shift is going to have to look like, pretty much. So I got this scrap metal, it's a galvanized bolt. Anyway, I'm going to try to cut that, and I'll weld that in right there, tack it in, and then test fit it, and that should give me my stock shifting, because it's 2 inches forward and 1 inch down, so it ends up coincidentally being pretty straight. So anyway, I have that. I cleaned the surfaces on my pedal here, and I'm going to start to weld that, and then I cleaned this side off the welded surface. So anyway, got it put back, and so the next step is to weld this up. So this is prepped, ready to weld. I'm going to prep this, get it ready to weld. I got the drive lines back yesterday afternoon, and they are painted and ready to go in, and here's what they look like. This is my rear drive line. I had to have it lengthened 2 inches, and so I shot a coat of paint on it. This fancy wrinkle paint was all that I had. And then this is my front drive line, and right here I had to have 2 inches taken out of that. So got that all done. It's all painted up. The shop put new U-joints in it, and that was a bonus for me, I guess. So now we are ready to install. Today has been a really big day for the Jeep project. I needed to have some welding done. I really don't like to take it to shops because I want to do all the work myself. However, I'm short some welding supplies and whatever, being in a different state than I live in right now for work. So anyway, a friend of mine has a welder, so today I got the welding done. So my gear shift, I cut this and I put it on the workbench. It needed to go 2 inches and 1 inch, and so I figured, measured this, needed a 2 inch shaft in here, so I got that welded in. And then on my throttle, I got it welded. I'm going to take and cut this all off right here, get rid of these sharp points that can snag me, and I'll cut that and get it ground down, and I'll get this installed. So I am going to go test fit shifter. If I have it slightly off, I'm going to heat up this new piece, and I can bend this forward, backward, or whatever way I need to. So anyway, without being able to tack it and test fit it, I just said send it home and I'll make it work. I pulled it out of the garage and let it idle here in the driveway, and discovered that the cooling fan doesn't kick on. Then in looking at that, researching it, I discovered that originally the sending unit for the temperature was actually the coolant temp sensor, and I believe may have been also the sending unit, so it had dual purpose. When I put the autometer gauges in, it's just the sending unit right to the gauge. So I have nothing that tells the computer what the temperature is. So I had no cooling fan, and after it passed 212 degrees, I shut it down. After getting it running, it was idling, and I noticed the alternator started making a bunch of noise. It got so hot I couldn't even touch it, and so I ended up replacing it, and I had to go buy a brand new alternator. And then my fuel gauge didn't work, so I started looking into it. The GM computer, it's a sine wave basically, and the Chrysler puts out a digital square wave. Without spending hundreds of dollars, I couldn't make the two work out, so I decided to delete the computer, and I just went from the transmission or transfer case directly to the gauge. So in doing that, I had to get back into the computer, find a 5-volt reference. The second wire had to go to a ground. I got that done, and then my signal, I took that to the speedometer, took it out for a test drive, and I do have a speedo. I have to calibrate it. It's an autometer, electronic, so it'll calibrate. So I got to do a 2-mile run, and then that'll calibrate it. For the speedometer, I had to get into the main wiring bundle. Number 7 on the blue connector was my reference voltage. That's this gray wire right here. And I had to cut it, tap into it, run the gray wire around over here to my speedometer, and I had to tie that in. So I got that done today. And then this is the signal wire, so now I got to button everything back up. Also, my cooling fan right here, my electric fan, I don't have a temp sensor going to the computer, so I had to go over into my box with the relays, and then I had to cut the wire. Oh, you can't see it in here, but I had to cut the input wire, and then I hooked it up into here on this gray wire into keyed power. So now when I turn the key on, my fan is always on. So eventually I will get the Camaro 3-wire sending unit. I just need to make sure it works with autometer. So one by one, I've deleted all the issues that I've had, and now I have my dash here. I'll show you that. So there's my tack, my speedometer, which I just got working today, my temp gauge, which I now have the fan, and it gets about up to 190 and it stops. Oil pressure seems a little low, but it works. My voltmeter works. My fuel gauge does not work properly. I need to fix that. This is a 0 to 90 ohm fuel gauge, and apparently the GM uses 40 to 250. So I emailed Autometer to see what I can do about that. I may have to buy a new gauge. So I've had it idling here on and off for about a couple hours today, just checking stuff out. I am prepared. I've eliminated all the issues that I have, and I'm prepared. I'm driving it to work tomorrow, so see how that goes. But here it is running. My new alternator, the fan, is blowing some nice cool air. Got my air intake. This vacuum runs my heater. I need to tie it into this vacuum up here, but I gotta get a hose. And here we are, a little exhaust. It sounds so good when you're driving it. So tomorrow, taking it to work. All right, I'm going to take it for a test drive. We'll see how it does. So a lot has happened since my last update. I've got the Jeep running. You see it in the background. I've been driving it around. I have a whole 130 miles on it now. I had a few issues. You saw the shifter on the workbench. I got a piece welded in on that. My transfer case linkage was really easy. I have an aftermarket shifter with a bunch of holes. I just relocated to a different hole and that went well. But the big problem was the vehicle speed sensor. That was a huge problem. I couldn't find a lot of information on it. The Jeep has a square wave 8,000 pulse per mile. The GM is a sine wave AC, and the two just do not talk. And I tried a bunch of stuff. I will show you what I ended up doing on the Jeep. My goal all along was to keep, instead of having two standalone systems with the Jeep, I wanted just one system. I didn't want to run two computers. I didn't want to run two separate wiring harnesses. So I integrated the GM and the Jeep together. I deleted the Jeep's PCM and all the wiring associated with it. I used the GM, and then I integrated all of my wiring. When I went to hook up the vehicle speed sensor, there's 3 wires on the Jeep, and it's a square wave, so you have your ground and a 5-volt reference, and then you have your signal which goes between. The GM is an AC. I did have the PCM reflashed to an 8,000 pulse per mile, but that still didn't talk back and forth. I read on some forums and they said, oh yeah, you don't need your VSS going into the computer. I already have a odometer speedometer, so it just learns whatever. So the speedometer and the odometer, that's not been an issue. The issue was when I would compression brake and push in the clutch, then it would die. After looking online, everybody online was like, yeah, you need the VSS hooked up because the engine doesn't know the vehicle's moving. So when you're compression braking, basically it shuts the fuel off. By the time you push in your clutch, it doesn't have time to turn the fuel back on. In a nutshell, that's what I understand. So the VSS puts a signal on the computer that says the car is moving, so it doesn't shut the fuel. I was trying to figure out a way to resolve the speedometer issue without spending a whole bunch of money. In the long run, I ended up spending money because I could not find any way to put a signal on the VSS in the GM computer and have it work. So I bought a Dakota Digital speed converter, basically. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is it. You basically program just about anything you want. This is a fully programmable universal speed interface. It's about, I think it's about 85 bucks. I got it all hooked up with the power, my Jeep digital signal in here, and then my AC signal out right here. Basically, it gives you an AC output, a DC output, an 8,000, 4,000, 2,000. So it really is set up for anything you want to do. I have a 12-volt power, a ground, and then from the Jeep speed sensor, I have the ground, the signal in, and then the 5-volt reference. I had already run those wires up to the speedometer, so I just basically tapped into those and ran them here, and then this goes to the VSS in the computer. The VSS out in the computer is not hooked up. I just wanted a signal going to the computer to confirm that the vehicle is moving. So this is a parallel circuit tapped off of my main line to the speedometer. I have it mounted here temporarily so that I could drive it and verify that it's functioning properly, and then I will mount this up under the dash. I didn't want it up under the hood because that is not a waterproof connection, and I didn't want to burn it out. So this did end up working, and if you do it, this wire is the VSS high. The VSS low, it said to hook up to the ground, and I had it hooked up to the power and the ground, but it didn't work. So I ended up hooking it up to sensor ground, and when I did that, it ended up working. In summary, if you have basic mechanical abilities and you want to swap a 5.3 in your Jeep, it's really not difficult. A lot of information, lt1swap.com, he has everything. I also sent the PCM to him for reprogramming. There's pretty much everything you need to know about the LS or your 5.3 on that website. And then ondemand5.com, I found that, and it was a complete wiring diagram of the Jeep. So I was able to identify the circuitry I didn't need on my Jeep and figured out what I had to hook up on from lt1swap.com, all their information, which helped me to figure out how to integrate the two systems. So with that information, a little research online, figuring out stuff that wasn't online, I was able to complete the project and get it done, and it actually runs and it drives good. So this one was a success. A little bit of headache here and there, but overall it was a fun time. Also, I did get my advanced adapters kit, which came with the clutch, bell housing, new radiator, mounts, everything you need to do it. That was a big help because I didn't have to fabricate those parts. So throw a little money at it and it's amazing what you can accomplish. Thanks for watching.